Hello and welcome. This is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and today we've got Project Manager part number 5, where we've added a ton of features, including the ability to display projects by project or by resource. So we've added that in. We've got a whole lot to show you. You can now see individual percentage completion, and we can also change that simply with a click of a button. So it's going to be a great training. We've got a ton to show you, so let's get started. All right, thank you so much for joining me today. We've got a lot to cover. We've added a lot in based on your suggestions, your recommendations, so I always appreciate it. If you've got any ideas, comments, questions, please leave them in the comments below on this video, and I'll be sure and do my best to get to those ideas. Your help makes this project manager and all projects make them amazing based on your ideas. In fact, if you have not yet, go ahead and click that subscribe button. Make sure you click on the notifications. I create these videos each and every Tuesday for you so that you can create amazing applications in Excel and see the tremendous possibilities. So I hope you'll go ahead and subscribe to that. I love making these videos. A great way to keep these videos for free is to support us by purchasing one of our amazing applications. We've got an 1,000 Excel resource guide. We've also got a 100 workbook zip file for just $37, and I've got an amazing 15-hour dashboard masterclass that's on a single click dashboard like you have never seen before. I'm going to include those links down below, so if you do get a chance, go ahead and click on that. That helps keep these videos free each and every week. All right, let's get into it. In the first few parts of this project, we primarily focused on this, which was the resources. We could view specific projects by resource, and of course we would combine the individual tasks in here. But of course, there's a different way to, if you want to see them per project, I have now added this toggle switch. So now you can see each particular project and of course the individual tasks that make up those projects here in the schedule. Each one of those projects will show a different color based on the progress. So we've got that, and we've also have the ability now, we've added a completion percentage. So clicking on a specific completion is going to show this pop-up and allows us to choose the completion percentage. So we're going to go over that if we have time as well, because we've got a lot to cover. We've got to show you how we switch between projects and resources. We've got to show you how we create these individual color conditions here based on the percentage completed. We've also got to show you how we've ability to change that based on some formulas. So we've got a lot to cover in this training, and of course we're going to put this in part 6 as well. So I want to keep creating this. As long as you have great ideas, as long as you keep watching these videos, I'll continue to build this out to make this the best Excel project manager. So we're going to be doing a lot. I've taken off weekends just so we can see the schedule clearly, but you'll know if you remember in part 3 and part 4 we have the ability to add weekends. Right now we just have them all on. Of course, if I were to just put one off, we would see the color change automatically here into the schedule and have these gray lines. So but for right now we'll just keep all days on so that we can quickly see easily see the schedule and easily see the tasks under each schedule. Now keep this in mind, I have automatically sorted tasks based on the start date. So for example, where now we have this start date on the 14th, if we were to change this start date to, let's say, the 16th, and then of course if we updated the schedule, you'll see that it automatically shift over. Now we have the 15th and the 16th. So tasks are sorted automatically so that they give these nice graduated display here. So the first tasks to be completed are always showing up on the left, and then the last tasks are always shown on the right. So we're going to show you how to do that. Also, the ability to add additional tasks is quite simple. For example, we've got this project here. It's got just one task called email client. We can quickly add a new task just by sending respond to client, and we can simply then add a specific assigned to here. It's with the drop down list for those, and we just have one person assigned on this, and then we can give it a date here. All we have to do is just select the number of days, and then give it a task completion. We'll just keep this. We still have the ability to select that it's pending here. We can also click 0% here. That's going to be the same thing. If they're 10% done, we can click 10% and it's going to show 10% automatically. Now all we have to do is refresh the schedule and it's going to show that 10% here, and it's going to show when they're beyond and who it's assigned to. So we've got a lot to cover. It's now a much more dynamic project manager because we can view them by projects and tasks in the same exact schedule simply by clicking on this toggle line. So let's go over that and let's do a short review. We do have the project tasks. All project tasks are kept in this table here called project tasks. Now when we load a specific project, we're going to run that project through an advanced filter. So we'll put in the project number in criteria here, and then the results are going to be here. So then what I want to do is, once I've taken these results, I've got all the results, then I'm going to sort them by start date. The earliest start date will appear here, the latest will appear here. We've got the ability to now sort them exactly as we want to, and if we reload the project, we're going to see that information come up. So all we need to do is click on that project again, and let's find the project number 11. If we look in the project list, we'll see that project number 11 is the new website here. So that's a brand new website. So we go back into that, we just find that specific particular job, and it's right here under the create new website, this job here. So all we need to do, this one, we're going to update right here just to 1, 2, and then we'll see it. Now we've got it right. Now we've got the additional period. All we have to do is refresh the schedule, and when we see this project, automatically the first day is automatically going to be sorted based on the first occurrence of a task all the way to the last occurrence of the task. So it's going to be, when we reload this schedule, every time we reload, it's going to be resorted automatically based on the schedule load. So we're going to show you how that works as well as the conditional formatting we use to create these percentages, how we save it, and we're going to continue on. So let's go ahead and start on the first. The first change that we made was the ability to change between resource and project. Now we have this really cool little toggle button that we're using, and we've just created two little shapes. This particular shape is called switch, so I've given it the name of switch so that we can use that, and all we're going to be doing is shifting it up and moving it down automatically. So let's take a look at that and see how we did that. We've created a macro. If we right click, we click assign macro, we can see that we're looking for a macro called project schedule switch, and that's the macro that is going to automatically assign, that changes those from resources to projects. And the basic idea is, when it's on resources, what I want to do is I want to take all of the resources based on this table here, the resource list. We haven't built this out. We're going to eventually probably add more information for your resources or employees, like such as email and things like that. But for now, we just have a list of names. So we're going to, for the resource, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take these names and I'm going to bring them over to the project manager. I'm going to paste them right here, actually in column R. And then what I want to do is I want to determine, based on a formula and some VBA code, which projects are assigned to that. So we've been over that. And then of course, if I want to do projects, what I'm going to do is I'm going to list all the projects out based on three conditions. And those three conditions are any job that starts within the listed month, any job that ends within this listed month, or any job that is being worked on. So for example, if we have a job that starts on December of 2018 and continues all the way to February, it doesn't have a start or an end date in January, of course, but it does continue through January. So those are the three conditions. Let me go over those again. Any job that starts in this January of 2009, any job or project that ends in January, or any job that starts before this particular month, and any job or project that ends after. So if we have those two conditions, something that begins before and finishes after, we also want it contained in this particular month. So that's important. So those are the three conditions. If any of those three conditions, we're going to look through the project list. If any of those three conditions exist in this project list, then I want to show those results right here into the advanced filter. So let's take a look at those conditions in a specific formula. Now, when we use advanced filters and we use criterias, we're now using formulas, and these are just numbers. Remember, 43466 is simply a date. 43466, that's a date. So when we format that as a date, we're going to see that that is automatically comes to January 1st, 2019. So these are all dates, but we're using formulas. This is why we can use this, so that regardless of your date format, this is going to work. These are based on formulas, so we don't need to add this criteria using VBA with formulas. So what does all of this mean? Okay, so we know 43466 is the first, but what about 43496? 43496, what is that? That is the end of the month. Let's take a look at that. If we format that as a date, we will see that it is 131. That is the end of the month. And how did we achieve that? Well, we know that the first day of the month is in the Project Manager T3. We know that is. Let's take a look at that. The first day of the month is, regardless of the month, is always going to be in this cell, T3, based on our formulas. Always going to be T3. T3, of course, is based on our year right here. It is based on the first day of the month, so it's 1 here. So we have our year. What is our month? Our month is in B5, and that is the number. Actually, our month is here, but this is not a number, right? We need to turn this January into a number. In this case, it's 1. So how do we do that? Well, we can do that with a just simple formula in B5, or we can use VBA. In this case, we use VBA to place the month. So B5 is the month, and then, of course, 1 is the first date. So T3 is always going to be our first day of the month, and as we change these, it will go ahead and update and change those automatically based on this. So T3. So what about the end of the month? Well, we can use a formula called end of month. So for example, let's go back into our project list. Now I want to find the end of the month. I know that T3 is the beginning. So let's say if we have this 43466, we know that's the 1st of January, but how do we find the end of the month? We can use a formula called end of month. E equals EO month. Okay, so we need a start date for this particular function. We're going to use this as the start date. Now, how many months before or after? Well, we don't want any months after. We don't want any months before. We want the exact month. So we're going to put 0 in. 0 is going to get us the end of the month. And when we format that as a date, we're going to see that that is January 31. So automatically, so we can use EO month. So I've done just that. Now remember, we have 3 conditions that we need. 3 conditions. We have 1. This is condition number 1, condition number 2, condition number 3. So we're going to go over each one of these. Now when you see this means the job must be and. That means it must be less than or equal to the first of the month, or greater than or equal to the end of the month. Okay, so that's important. So that's one condition, less than or equal and greater than or equal. That means it starts before, remember, starts before the first of the month and ends after. And, right? And when you see them all in one line, it's and then or this, okay? So it's like this. Let's write it out. Equals and condition 1, condition 2, right? Condition 2, or it's like or, so we're placing an or. So we've got condition and then we'll do an or. So it's or this is condition 1, and then we'll put in condition 2, and so on and so forth. So or condition 1, condition 2. So we have 3 different, and then again we'll do another and then again and. So we're going to and. So it's got to have 3 conditions. So it's going to be something like this if we're going to put it in formula. And condition 1, condition 2, and then and condition 1, condition 2. So we've got 3 different conditions, 3 different. It must be this or this or this. So what's the second condition? The second condition must be greater than the first of the month, greater than or equal to the first of the month, and remember and then and then or. So basically 3 different conditions that we can have. What's the second? Or less than, or and less than the end of the month. So in this particular case, it would be a project that starts greater than or equal to the first month, and that it ends less than or equal to the 31st of the month. So that's that condition. We have one more condition. What about a specific project that is greater than or equal to the first of the month and less than or equal? And then so we have end dates. Those are based on end dates, and these are based on start dates, right? So we've got a start date. or an end date that's within. So an end date that's within the month, or a start date that's within the month. Okay, so we've got those three conditions. We're going to run this advanced filter, check for all of these conditions, and then put the results right here. We're going to then take the results, and I'm going to go through every single job name, and we're going to project name, and we're going to put them on this list. But before we do that, so let's say I'm going to put the first one. Let's say here's our project list. So project number 1. We're going to go through, we're going to loop through these, starting in project number 1 and going all the way to the bottom. But for each project, we're going to run this project number through another advanced filter because I need to know if there's any tasks. So we're going to we're going to run it through another advanced filter for project tasks. So I'm going to put that project number right here, project number 1, or in this case 11, and I'm going to run it through another advanced. And I want to know all of the tasks for project number 11, and then all those tasks I'm going to put it right under. So for example, this is project number 11, new website, right? So we're going to take all those tasks and we're going to put them right down below it. Then we're going to move to the next project and the next, and just keep going down based on all the projects. So for every project, we're going to take all the tasks, we're going to place it right below the project. Then we're going to move to the next project. We're going to take that project and we're going to pull in all the tasks, and so on and so forth. So we're going to run through that loop, and we're going to do that in VBA. So let's take a look at that and see just how we did that. All right, into the VBA editor, we're going to the Developers tab. If you don't have the Developers tab available, you can find that Developers tab in your options and just click the Customize ribbon and you'll see the Developers tab right here. All right, so into the VBA, you can also take a shortcut, Alt F11 will get you there. And we've got a few modules and some macros, and let's going to focus on the schedule macros because we're focused on that scheduling. And we've made a few changes here, added some macros. The project schedule, we now have a very basic project schedule load. This used to be the macro that loaded everything, but now all we're going to doing is going to based on 2 macros. So we're going to either load the projects or load resources, right? We have 2 macros now. Load resources or load projects, and it's going to be based on one single condition, and that's going to be based on B1. Let's take a look at B1. What happens during B1? B1 is going to keep track of what our schedule's on. Here's B1. This is either going to display project or it's going to display resources, and that's going to be simply when we change that button, this toggle here, it's going to change it to resource. And if we change it again, it's going to go back to project. So there's a small macro that we run on that. Let's take a look at that very small macro so that we can see that. And it's called project schedule switch. Remember, I just showed you that this is the macro that is assigned to that little square, that little shape. And all we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing 2 things. We're going to be moving the shape up or down, and we're going to be assigning B1 either resource or the name project. So that's what we're going to do. And then of course we're going to run the macro associated with that. Okay, the first thing we want to do in this particular macro is we want to determine a value. This value is going to help us move either up or down the button. So we're going to be determining that as long. Now B1, if the current value of B1 is resource, then we have to switch it to project, right? If it's currently on resource, then we need to change it to project. Let's just take a look at that real quick. If it's currently on resource here, if B1 is currently resource, then we know to change it to project. If it's currently project, we know to change it back to resource. So that's just how we do that. So we can easily test this, a little test we run. So we know if B1 equals resource, then we must switch it to project view. Then B1 equals project. And then what we want to do is I want the move value to be 12, and I want it to be a positive. Why 12? Because we're moving it down. We're going to use top, right? So when we want to move a shape down, we want to use a positive number. If we want to move it up, we use a negative number. Up is negative, right? So if it's top minus 12, it's going to move up 12 pixels up, and if it's positive, it's going to move 12 pixels down. And the reason we do that is so when we assign the move value to 12, we can use move value because it becomes dynamic for both moving up or down because it's a dynamic. So we know then that we're going to assign our value to move value, which in this case is 12. However, if it's resources, we're going to do minus 12. Why is that? Well, minus 12, of course, is up, right? So if it's on project currently and I need to move it up, I need to move this little icon, I need to move this little shape, I need to move it up, and I need to move it up 12 pixels. So if the value is negative, it's going to move up automatically from its current position. But if it's in the current position is up and we need to move it down, we need to add 12 or subtract 12. So simply is that, moving up and moving down. All right, moving on. So we've assigned the value, and then what we're going to do is we're going to run a macro called load projects. Load projects, that's the project view, because now we're on project. And otherwise, else, assuming it's not a resource, that means the current one is projects, then do this. Then assign B1 as a resource. And of course, we're going to move it up 12. And we do that by assigning move value to a negative 12, because in this line we're going to actually do the move. This move is regardless of whether it's resource, because this value is dynamic. This is either negative 12, moving it up, or positive 12, moving it down. So that's easy. We can use this increment top. All this one line it does is it takes the switch shape and it moves it up or down. That's all it does. All right, so then we're going to load the project schedule. So basically we're going to either move the button in this instance, and we're going to run either one of two macros. We're going to load the projects, or we're going to load the resources. Now we've been over load resources, and that's pretty much the same as we've done last, but our new macro is load projects. So let's go to that. If we scroll down, we'll see our brand new macro called load projects. And basically it's what I just explained it to you. We're going to get a list of all the projects within the month. We're going to then determine all the tasks for each project in a loop. Now let's go over that through VBA. First of all, we're going to dimension the last project row. I need to know that last project row because we're going to run an advanced filter. So we're going to do that. We also need to know the last resource row. So project list, if we're going to determine all the projects, I need to know the last row. So in this case it's 13, because we're going to run an advanced filter based on the criteria that we went over. Then our results are going to come here. We're going to take our results, we're going to run a loop starting from 4 all the way to the last row. We're going to need to know the last row of the results, so we're going to dimension that. All right, continuing on. So the last results row, we need to dimension that. The project row, we're going to loop through. We need to know what row we're on the project. We also need to know the results row. What is the project row and what is the results row? Well, the results are here, right? Those are our advanced filter results. I need to keep track of that, but I also need to keep track of what row we're on. We're going to start on row 4. We're going to go all the way down to whatever the last row is based on everything. So I definitely need to keep track of what row we're on here. That's very important. So we're going to define that as project row, because that's very important. All right, moving on. We also need to know the last task row and the last results row. And remember, for each project, we're going to put in the project number, and we're going to run an advanced filter. So all of the tasks within that project. To do that, I need a few things. I need to know the last task row, which is going to be here in 33, so we need to determine that. We also need to know the last results row, the results of our advanced filter, so we need to know that so that we can load on all of our tasks. So we need to know the last, and of course we need to know the task row. We need to know what row we're on in the task in the project manager. So we need to define all those. And so we've got the task row and the project number. Project number is string. In this case, we're just using it as an advanced filter, so string is fine. We're not doing any calculations. We're going to stop the calculations, and of course, that is in this macro here. If you're not familiar with that, stop calculations, all it does is enable events false, calculations to manual, and screen updating false. This speeds up our code. The only thing we need to make sure of when we have stop calculation is that we reset it before the macro ends. So with the application, we're going to, before that macro ends, we're going to reset the calculation, which of course is going to enable events, turn calculations to automatic, and then screen updating back on. Anytime you have these, you must finish it with these. We cannot leave it open, but it helps speed up our code tremendous. So we need that because we're doing a lot of loops and we're doing a lot of advanced filters, and when you have a lot of data, so that's something very, very important. All right, back into the scheduling module. Now what we want to do is we want to clear the existing projects or resources. Sheet 1 R4 through AX, and we want to clear out all the projects. And what that's going to do is take this R4 all the way through AX and just delete them. So we're going to clear them out just like that, right? There's no formulas in here, there's no code. It's all, so as soon as we change it to project and back to resources, it's going to clear, which is a really nice feature. So it's going to reset everything. So the first thing I want to do is I just want to clear out all the projects that are there. So we do that through just this one line of code here, R4 through AX53, clear the contents, clear existing projects or resources. We need to do that. Now remember, we want to get the last project row. Our projects are located on sheet 2. That's a list of projects. Remember, I need that last row because we're going to run an advanced filter. Of course, we're going to just run a test. If there's no projects, we don't need to continue on. Maybe you've cleared out your database. Maybe this is the first project you haven't done. So just in case there's no projects, we're going to exit the sub if it's less than 4. All right, with sheet 2, now this is the project list. We're going to focus on the list project list. Sheet 2, we also want to clear out any prior result of the old advanced filter, AA4 through AL999. Let's take a look at that project list. This is our result. So we want to clear out every time we run a new advanced filter, we want to clear out those results. So just starting with AA4 and then all the way down, we're just going to clear out AA through AL. We want to make sure those results are cleared out because when we run a new filter, our new results are going to appear here. So we want to make sure we clear out any previous filter. So next up, we're ready to run our advanced filter. We have our last project row. We're going to start in A3. And of course, with advanced filters, we want to make sure we include our header rows always. And our header row starts in A3, goes all the way to L, and then the last row. In this case, the last row is 13. We're going to run that advanced filter. We're going to use the criteria here, also including the headers, T3 through W6. That is our project criteria, right? Remember, we went over these 3 conditions, or this, or this, or this. Any one of those 3 conditions, we want those results of those projects to appear here based on that criteria. All right, so that's our advanced filter. So we do that starting in A3 through the last project row. We're going to run our advanced filter. We want to copy that information to a new location. The results we want to copy to a new location. So we've got that covered. And then of course our criteria range, I just went over that with you, T3 through W6. That's going to give us our criteria. We've already set the criteria using formulas, so we don't need to add the criteria in through VBA. We want to copy those results. We want to copy them to AA3 through AL3, including those headers. Remember, those headers must be exactly the same. And of course, unique, we're going to put as false. I don't need unique. If projects are the same, that's fine. I do want to load all of the results, even if they are exactly the same. All right, moving on. Now we need to determine the last row of the results. The last row we use and XL up to get the last row. In this case, our last row of results are 11, row 11. So we'll need to get that last row. We can determine that last results row using range AA. We're using column AA, 9999, and XL up. That's going to get us our last row because we need to loop through those. So that's really important. I also want to run a check. If for some reason the last results row are less than 4, then go to no results. No results. It's going to skip all of this and it's going to put it right down here, right before the reset. Then we reset the calculations. Then we end it. There's nothing, if there are no projects, there's nothing else to do. So we're going to skip all of that. All right, assuming that there are, of course, projects that are in our results, we can then run a loop. So last task row, we're going to get the last task row is in sheet 7. Now, what we need to do is start filter our tasks, filter the task. So in sheet 7 is where our tasks are located. Sheet 7 is project tasks right here. I need to get the last row of the project tasks. If we go into project tasks here and we see here our sheet 7 and our last row is 33. So I need to get that. Of course, I also need to put the project number. I need to take the 11 project manager. Our project numbers here, right? So we're going to go into our project list. We're going to take this project number in AA, and the last one, of course, was 11. In AA, whatever row, as we loop through these, we're going to take these project numbers and we're going to place them right here in the criteria. We're going to run an advanced filter and see what tasks are for that project. So we're going to do all of that in VBA. All right, so continuing on, we do need the last task row, which we can get right here. And of course, the project row is going to start at 4. This is the starting row of our loop. Starts at 4. Why do we start it at 4? Because our results start in 4. The results of our project list start right here. So we know the last row, we've determined it. So we're going to loop starting at 4, going all the way to the last one. We want to loop through each one of the results of these projects, or each one. All right, moving on. So the project, we're starting our loop, our for next loop. For the project results row, this is the variable that's going to keep track of what row we are on as we loop through those results of that project. Starting at 4, going all the way to the last result row. Now, all of this is in that loop until we see that next project results row. So all of this here is in that loop. Let's go ahead right here. So all of that we're going to do for every single project. So it's going to continue loop and loop and loop. What it's going to do is it's going to find all the tasks and place all the tasks. Okay, so sheet 1, first of all, we want to do is I want to put the project name on sheet 1. Sheet 1 is our projects. So the first thing I want to do into the project manager is I want to put that project name, I want to put it in R and whatever project row we're on. Take that project name and put it right here. So we do that through this line of code. We know in our advanced filter results project list, we know our project name is right here. So I want to take site redesign, this one right here in AB4, and I want to place it right here in R4. Just want to do that. And then we're going to load the tasks. Then we're going to go to the next project. We're going to load the tasks for that project. Then we're going to go to the next. So we're going to keep looping through and going through that like that. All right, so the first thing is R4, R in the project row. In this case, the first one's R4, equals AB in the project results row, equals AB. So all we're doing, again, just like I said, is taking it AB in whatever project row and placing these projects right in here into R. And of course, in S is where our task names are going to go. And of course, here into R for each task, we're going to have the completion percentage. All right, so here we have, so the first one R, so we want to continue on to that. So we know that R. Next up, what do we want to do? Next up, I want to sheet 1, the cells of project row. I want to know where to put this. For each project, I've got to know where to put the description. I've decided to put the project description here. We've got the project name, but if you see this is a test description, that I want to put this description right here. I want to put it right here because we don't really want to put resources because it could be assigned to many different resources. So let's go ahead and put the project description and the project, but where do we put it? Again, I think we went over this, but let's go over it again. If this January 1st, right? We know this is January 1st, this column T, right? It's always going to be the first of the month. But what column is it? Well, this is column 20, right? So if I'm going to place something on January 1st, I'm going to place it in column 19 plus whatever day it is. So for example, if it's going to appear on January 2nd, I need to place it in column 19 plus 2. 2 is the day, so I need to determine the day. So if I have a date, let's say January 2nd, and I want to know the number of days, all I need to do is run it through a days formula, and I do just that in VBA. So if we take a look at that, the day, I need to get the day of what? AD in the project results row. What is AD in the project? What is this? This is the start date right here. Let's take a look at that. So what we're doing, remember, we're running through the project, we're running through all these results, and we know the start date here is in AD. So if I want to place this in a specific column, I need to get this date and I need to extract 14 from that. Then I want to add it to 19. Right? So I want to extract, all I want from 1/14/2009, all I want is the number 14. Then I want to add 19 to it. And when I add 19 plus 14, I'm going to get 33. And that means I want to place it in column 33. And I want to place, what I want to place there? I want to place this test description right there. So if we look at this, equals column, just so we can see, okay, so it's column 33. You know that's column 33. So that's where I want to place it, right? We know how we get that. It's 14 plus 19. So I do just that in the code itself. All right, let's clear that out. So column 33, how do I get that column 33? I do that. So I get the day of the date. Here's the date. Then I add 19, and that's going to tell me what column. This is the column here. This is the column 19 plus the day. 33. So the project row we know is going to loop. So now we're on, project row starts at 4. So we're on, the first one is 4, and it's going to continue on the next one and the next one. So 4, cells 4, which is the row, column 33, what do we want? This is where we're going to place it. We're using cells. Why are we using cells? Because both the row and the column are numerical. They're both dynamic and numerical, so we use cells in that case. Moving on, so what do we want to place there? Well, what I want to place there is whatever is in AG and the results row. Our results row are looping, right? So AG, that is the description. So when we go back into it, and we look in our project list and we see the results AG, here's AG, that is our description. So this is what I actually want to place in that cell. That's going to give us our description. It's going to put our description right in here, test description. All right, so now we're done. Now we know how to place both the project name and the project description in the right place. So moving on through our code, let's go ahead and take a look at this. Then we've increased, now we must increase the project row, right? We finished with row 4, we finished with this one, now we've got to increase it one more. So now what I want to do is I want to check, okay, now are there any, now I've placed the project information here, I've placed the name and I've placed the description, but what about any tasks? Are there any tasks? For example, this project has no tasks. If I click on this project, we will see that there's no tasks assigned. So in that case, we would just go to the next project right here, site testing. But for projects that do, I want to run through and I want to determine how many tasks are within that project. We can do that through the following line of code. So now we're ready to load projects tasks. Now, first of all, we want to determine the project number, right? That's very important. We need the project number because it is that project number that we're going to use as our criteria to pull in the results here. So that's very important. All right, so we've got to get that. So we've got to get the project number. And of course, the project number is located right here in AA and whatever the project rows. So I want to take that and we can define that as a variable, and we've done that here. So the project number is AA. So this determines our project number. Next up, sheet 7. This is our task sheet. I want to do a few things. I want to clear the results. I want to make sure that there's no results. P3 through V99, that's going to clear our results. So if we look in the project tasks and we see our results, P3 all the way through W and down, that'll clear all of our filter results so that we're ready to run a new advanced filter. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to place that project number right into L3. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to determine the last row, the last task row. We're going to get that. Then we're going to run our advanced filter based on all this data, based on the criteria of the project, and we're going to put the results right in here. The results are going to go from P2 all the way to W so that the results are displayed below that. And we can do that with the following lines of code. Sheet 7 L3, that's where the project number is going to go. That's our criteria. We're now ready to determine, we've already determined the last task row up here, right up here. This line of code determines our last row of tasks. So now we're ready to run our advanced filter using, of course, the headers in our tasks A2 through H is the last column. Then we're going to run an advanced filter based on all of our task data right here. Of course, just like the other advanced filter, we're going to copy that data to a new location. We're going to use criteria, in this case, L2 through M3. That's our criteria. We just went over that. And we're going to copy that information all the way to P2 through V2 and unique false. So just copying all those results over to P2 through W2 so that all of our tasks are here. So if we go through the project manager and I load a specific job with tasks and we refresh the schedule, we're going to see now that we have project tasks in our results. And the last one we did was project 11. So it puts that project number here and takes all those results, and then we're going to sort that by date and then run it over. All right, so the sorting of the data is not only done actually when we load the scheduler, loading the project necessarily, we don't need to sort the dates, but the schedule is important, so that keep that in mind. All right, continuing on with our macro. All right, so now we have the last task row. I want to know, are there any tasks? So the first thing we have to do is determine the last of our results, right? I want to know what the last row is. In this case, it's 8, but I need to determine, because if that last task row is less than 3, then we know we have no project task. So we need to determine that and then run this if-then statement, seeing if we have actually any tasks. We can do that in the code here. So we determine the last task row using P column and then end XL up. And then, of course, this is our if-then statement. If the last task row is less than 3, then go to no tasks. That's going to skip all the way down here and run it right to no tasks right here, no tasks, so that we go to the next project row. So this project has no tasks, then we're ready to go to the next project result row. All right, continuing on. We now know that we do, if we've passed this, we know that we actually have tasks. Second thing, I want to sort it by date. When we're running the schedule, I want to sort it by date. Why are we doing that again? Because I want the first here and the last here, and we do that because when we load a specific project, I want it to show up like this: the first one on the left, the last one on the right. So to do that, we need to sort by date, because I want, if there's something that begins on the second, in fact, we should probably freeze these columns just so we can continue to always see the headers on this page. All right, now when we freeze it, now when we scroll up, we can see those dates, which is kind of a nice feature. Okay, because I want this first one to appear on the second. If our first task is on the second, I want it to appear here in the second, so that we get this nice graduated design here. All right, so that's what we have, and then we have all of our tasks here. And of course, generally what I want to do is when we load it, I want to put it in the order in which they come, in the order in which, of course, they were entered. I want the same order here. So we've done that, kept the order, but for scheduling, I do want them to show up. So we're sorting it. So the next thing is sorting. And how do we sort it? Well, of course, we're going to clear any sort fields that are on sheet 7. And next up, I want to sort it based on S3, Sort that. Why are we basing? Because that is the date on our tasks. S3, that is the date. So if we go into project tasks, we see S3 is the date. I want to sort it based on this first start date. That is going to be our sorting. So we run through that based on, of course, the last task row. And of course, the table, we're going to start the sort P3 all the way through W. And the last row, we're going to sort it, but this is the key, S3. That's the first one. And of course, I want to sort that ascending so that it goes from the smallest to the largest. So we can do that, sort values on ascending, sorting on values, and sort normal. With sheet 7, now here's the range. With the sort, we're going to use P3 through W and the last task row, P3. And we're going to apply that sort. That's going to sort it. So now we're ready to run our smaller loop based on all those tasks. So for task row equals 3 all the way to the last task row. What we're going to do is we're going to loop, starting here at 3 all the way to the last. We're going to loop through those. And what I want to do is I want to place this specific task name. I want to do it here. Here's what we want to do with that loop. We want to place the task name right here in column S. I want to place the completion here into R, and I want to place the specific resource assigned into whatever column is the start date of that specific task. So I want to place that right in the start date. So basically, I'm going to place these 3 values based on the task: the completion amount, the task name, and the resource in the column associated. And to get it in the column, we're going to use the same formula, which is going to be the start date plus 19. So we're going to use that using the day. So those are the 3 things that we're going to be placing, and we can do that with these 3 lines of code here, a few lines of code based on the start date. All right, so sheet 1R, of course, that's going to be the completion percentage, and that's, of course, located in U. In our results, U is the column that holds our specific completion. So U contains our completion. That's where we're going to place that in R. Next up in S, we're going to place the task name. So in our code, that of course, that's column Q. Q is where it's coming from. Where it is going to is right here into column S. So we're going to just use the line of code to place that there. So sheet 1S and the project row keeps track of where our project is located, equals sheet 7Q and the task row. That's our task name. Next up, what I want to do is, if for some reason there's a project that begins less than the first, then I want to place it. All right, this should be T actually. Okay, so if the start date S is less than T3, what is T3 and what is S in the task row? Well, of course, T3 is our first day of the month, right? T3 is our first day. So if we have a task that starts before, I want to put the name in this first, right? If it starts before, I want to put that task, that specific description right here in the first, because it starts before. So we want to run a check. So S, if we look in the project, S is our start date. So if this start date is less, but it still runs into the month, then I want to make sure to put that there so that I know the start dates are appear before just in case. And we'll probably run a check. It should be if the start date plus the days. Maybe I'll make that update. The start date plus the days, if those run into the month. If those run into, in other words, if that run into then we should probably place it on the first of the month. For example, let's say it's some project started on December 30th of the previous year, but it continues into the 2nd of January. I want to place it that specific description right here so that it shows up. So I want to make that correction there. I may want to write something like this: if the start date is less than the month, and there's another condition, and what else? And I would say, let's copy this for ease, and I would say the start date plus the number of days. And what is the number of days? That's T, right? Plus the number of days. T is greater than or equal to T3. Then what? Then we don't need that. Then let's put a space there. Then place the name on the first row. Then S, actually it's the task name. Let's change that to the task. And it's also the task description. All right, on the first column. So what I want to do then, let's update this. What I want to do then is I want to put S and our first column, actually in this case on our project manager, and I want to put this resource assigned to right in the first column. Is actually the resource. So I want to put that because it started before, right? But it's ending after. So just in that case, I want to put that right in T. So I want to put the resource assigned to R into column T. So let's update that so that we can look at that. That's just in case it starts before. So we want to take that. So let's go over these conditions again. If the start date is less than the month start date, right? If it's less, and there's another condition, and the start date plus the number of days is greater than the start date of the month. That, for example, that would be December 30th is the start date. Let's say the number of days is 5, so that's going to run into January, meaning it's greater than the start date. Then what do I want to do in that case? I want to add the resource to the first column. All right, first column, and that column is in column T. So it's column T. We're going to put column T here. And what do we want to place there? We want to place the resource. And where's the resource located? The resource is located right here in our results. In this case, it's R, assigned to R. So now we have that R. So that's going to place R, sheet 7, R, and test score, add resource to the first column. So otherwise, place that resources. Where do we want to place it? We want to place it in based on the day number of the date, right? The start date. Here's our start date. If the start date is on the 14th or whatever it is, then I want to add 14 plus 19 so that it appears in the 33rd column of the project row. Same thing, but now we're placing the resource there. So that's how we get it. So just once again, let's go over that again. If for some reason our task starts before January 1st, but it comes into the task is currently, it's a 4-day task and it starts before, but it's going to finish maybe on the 2nd. I want to place that resource right here. Otherwise, place it right here based on the start date of the column. Place that resource right here. So that's how we do that. All right, let's move on with the code. Now we just simply increase the project row by 1 because we've just placed the task. Right, we've just placed the first task here. Now we need to go to the next task, and this is all the way until that task loop is completed. In this case, our last one, until we get to install WordPress. Once that's done, and once we get on our project task and install that last one, we're good to go. So if I load this project, and we see that our last one was here, we're going to go all the way to the bottom, in this case 8, and then we're going to be done. So we're going to do that. So we're going to keep increasing the project rows. So it's a loop within a loop, right? Here is the loop. We're going to go through all the tasks, there we go. So we're going to go all of the tasks, and we're going to loop through each one, placing them, all the data, those 3 values, placing the completion percentage, placing the task name, placing the resource, and then we're going to move on to the next task. Once we've completed all the tasks, we can then move on to the next project. So we go through that loop. So that is the loop that we do through the schedule. That is the loop. So when we click on the project manager and we click on project or by project, it's going to loop all of those. Going to loop through all those. So it goes through each job, then it goes through each task and it plays it. All right, so we've seen that. We know how we're actually loading projects now, but how do we know how we get the value 150, but how do we get this conditional formatting to appear? Well, that's relatively simple conditional formatting. We go into the home and go into conditional formatting and manage rules. We can see we have a specific gridded color scale. So let's take a look at that. Edit. What I want to do is if it's 0%, and of course you can change these colors as you see fit, we've created a conditional formatting using format all cells based on their values. And of course it's a 2-color scale. If the percentage is 0, I want it to appear in yellow. If the percentage is 100, I want it in green. And based on the percentage, it's going to appear different colors somewhere within this specific color scale that based on the value. So that's very easy. It's based on a percentage. So that's how we want this applies to every cell from R4 through R37. So I want to place that. So that's how it's going to work. And of course, if it's a text value, it won't show up. It's only going to show up if it's a percentage. So this is how we can display those percentages based on this. And now also that's how we get that. And now we also have updated our task to add a completion center. So when we make a change, if I make a change, and I'm going to show you this, will probably get to this particular one next time, but if I make a change here and I add 50% onto that, then how do we get that 50% automatically to show up right here onto the task theme here? How do we get that 50% to show up right here? Well, we can do that. We can do that through our workbook code that I'll show you right now. So here is in our project manager. That's a change specifically on the project itself. And that's here under worksheet change because we're making a change to the project manager. What changes are we making? Well, let's take a look. We're making some sort of a change either between K4 or P and the last row, whatever the last row is in this case, 99. So we're making some sort of a change. When I make that change, I want something to happen. And if you look here, they're hidden, and I'll go ahead and show you these. We have our task rows here. We did go over that in a previous. So we have hidden, we have our task row. So I know that on row 17 of our tasks, so if we look in project task and we look on row 17, I know what row it is. I know what row to place that. I know what column because the completions are always in column F, and I know the order. So we know where to place that automatically, that 50%. But in the code, let's show you what that is. So if we make a change, and we go down here on task change, but not on, if there's a task change, some type of change between K4 and P26, and B2 equals false and B3 equals false. What are those two values? Well, if we look in the project manager and we look in B2 and B3, we see that B2 is a project load. So that means when the project load, that's also this type of a change, but we don't want anything to happen on that type of a change. And of course, on the new project, if I add a project, I'm also making some changes here. In fact, I need to clear this out. Those should be cleared on new project. Let's take a look at that. So we can make sure to clear that out. We need to include Q because these are the rows based on taxes. So let's take a look at that. We want to make sure that we clear on project load. So when we go into the project macros and we go up here to project new, we want to make sure that K4 through Q26 is cleared out because I added some columns. So we want to make sure the Q, because we want to clear the Q column out. That's important. So cancel new, and then we click add project, and now it's going to be cleared out. So now we've got those lines. So that's very important. In fact, let me move this over because we did have a little bit. And we still have the ability to hide tasks and show tasks, but it's a little bit cramped. Now we got to move them over a little bit, move them all over, and then we can hide tasks. Okay, so now we've got a little bit more spacing here because we've got a lot of features here. So on new task, we want to make sure that all the tasks, and of course, if the type of changes, if it's that type of change, we don't want to save anything to the database, only when we actually load a project and make a change. So when we're loading it, right, those are type change we don't, but only, so when we're loading it, I need to know one's for loading, project load, this goes to, so this must be false and this must be false in order for what? In order for a change, some type of change, to make it automatically into the database so that on row 28 can actually be changed to 90%. That's the change I want. That's the change I want. So when we do that and we go into the code, we can see that right here. So we have the code. So those two things, B2, B3 must be false. Project load a new project. So when all of those conditions are met, we can do something. If Q, then existing task. We need to know if it's an existing task or a new task. I did go over that with you last time, how we save tasks, but all we did is add in additional features so that we have here sheets. We know the task row. We determined the task row. That's been changed to Q now. Q, right? So here the task row is in Q, column Q. Let's take a look at that, double check. Column Q. So we know I've got to pull this task row. What if there's no value here? Then I know it's a new task. Then I know it's going to go right here, brand new task here. So that is how we do this. So we've got the new task, we've got existing task. So we know, and then all I need to do is determine the column. For example, if this equals column, if this column is 11 for the task name, right, and this column is column 2, I just need to add 9, right? We know that this is called equals column, right? This is column 2, right? So all I need to do is add 2 because they're all in order here. This is the same order, right? Task name, assigned to, start date, days, completion, status. That's the same exact order as here. Task name, assigned to, start dates. So as long as I have the order, I know that if I make a change here, I subtract 9. So for example, this is column 9. And I want to make a change into that same column here, I just subtract 9. So we do that in the code right here. Sheet 7, those are our tasks. The task row, we determine that whether it's a new task or an existing task. The target column, right, we're making a change to 11, column 11, minus 9. That means column 2 in our sheet 7 is the one that's going to have that change. So I can use this one line of code regardless of the changes, regardless of whether I am changing a task name, assigned to, start date. So I can use that same line of code regardless of what I change here. Any of these 6 different columns, any change there is automatically going to be updated right here into these 6 columns right here automatically. All right, that is how we have done that. All right, we've gone through that. We've got a lot to cover. In fact, next week we're going to be going over some more things. In fact, you can take a look at this. I created this pop-up, which we're going to go over, and this pop-up allows us to have completion. It's like a little bit of a slider, but it's my own made-up one. And all we need to do is click on the 40, and we're going to show you how I did that and how to create a pop-up automatically. Of course, in the next training, we've covered an hour. I don't want you to fall asleep. I wanted you to keep you awake, and of course, I want to create something that you love. So your ideas, and I've had a ton of ideas on this project manager, so I'm going to try to incorporate as many as possible. And as long as you keep watching, keep sharing, keep liking, and keep commenting, I'll make sure to continue so that we can build the best project manager in Excel you've ever seen. All right, thanks so much for joining me this week. We'll see you next week, and I much appreciate it. Thanks so much.